Hi, it's Pete the Polymath. Now, I've spent 45 years of my adult life trying to figure out all of the mysteries of life. Now, there's one that in my generation, which is now called the Jones generation, because I was born in 1958, there was no sex education. There was no pornography. No one would teach us anything. Our parents didn't teach us anything at all. There was nothing we could do. I tried to learn about sexuality by reading the Reader's Digest. How does Joe's genitalia work and Jill's, like pathetic stuff. And in desperation, my peers, when we were 15 years old, we would go to the library in the school, which was very, very unusual for anyone to go to the library at school. But sometimes it was raining and we just say, let's just go there. We'd sit around a table, and for some reason in a boys' school, they had subscribed to Dolly Doctor. No, Dolly magazine. And in that there was Dolly the Doctor, where adolescent girls would write in and get advice from someone, a doctor, about different kind of things that are happening with their body through puberty and stuff. And we would be laughing at this stuff and lapping it up, literally, because we just were so desperate for any information on the fact about how women work, because it was an all-boys school, right? And in that time, there was even debates. Some of the parents, very few, said, well, let's teach the boys sex education. The rest said, no, we never needed that. Anyway, we got some. It was terrible. And when I got through school, it was a disaster. I didn't know anything about anything. It was just, my whole adolescence was just a catastrophe of hormones and embarrassment and just not knowing what was going on. So in my early adults, once I got through tertiary, I decided I'd better make some sense of this. And so I got a book that was called The Height Report. That's H-I-T-E. And that's the name of the person who wrote the book. And it was a book written by women about women. And it was quite radical. Back in the late 70s, it was written. Everyone was talking about it, because suddenly women had a textbook to compare their own experience, their sexuality with other women's, right? And so I went through this thing. It has all to do with the erogenous zones and the emotions and all of the stuff, like the attractions, the relationships, all the stuff was there in this book. All of these women discussing what it was that they were, the experiences they were having, what they expected their lover to do, to have, to enjoy, to participate in. And so it was quite radical. But I'm a polymath, and I was on my big journey back then. I was really just beginning my big polymath journey, and I thought, well, I'd better figure this stuff out, because it might come in handy one day, rather than just stumbling into the unknown and just expecting the best, right? And I learned a lot. I learned an enormous amount. And I'd like to pass on some of that education to you now. Now, a lot of what we have to do is just try and understand our learning process. And if you begin with a textbook and then have the experiences that can make more sense, rather than not having any textbook and just try to figure it out, and your mates aren't going to tell you anything because they don't know anything either. Anyway, so I ended up sort of figuring it all out, but the problem was that women couldn't really deal with who I was. It's like me trying to satisfy them, rather than like most men will just sort of say, well, I'll just do what I want, and the women can either enjoy it or not. Anyway, I can make the boast of my lovers had orgasms with me, like simultaneous orgasms, almost 100% of the time, right? It's almost unheard of. But that's what happens if you understand the way the system works. And so there's some aspects, before we get to the actual sexuality sort of part of things, the lesson I want to give to you is that is that the reason why humans exist is that we did not mate randomly, not like sort of dogs and cats and stuff. And we did courtship behaviour. Now, we have courtship behaviour in some animals. They howl and they scream and they flap their wings and jump around and things like that. But we had our own courtship behaviour, and it did have a lot to do with making sounds. And also had a lot to do with sort of touching and things like that, and sniffing. It had a lot of things to do with that. And so I'd like to give you some insights into what we should do if we are to be successful in having a true, loving, long-term relationship. That's what we want. Our evolution meant that it was best for ourselves, their partner, to be strongly bonded all the way through to the actual time of copulation. We don't copulate with strangers. We copulate with someone we have an intense emotional relationship with. And that's very hard to get across to people because, like, one night stand, why not? Well, if you have a one night stand, you haven't got the foundations. Maybe it will work, maybe it will, but you're taking a big chance. You've got to train your mind to fall in love. Now, you don't fall in love with consciousness, like your lust, and you can be devoted and dedicated and focused with your mind. I want to do this. I want this now. But that's too fast. It's not the foreplay of the whole brain. So getting yourself in the brain state, it's the mind. It's your mind that has to form a relationship with your lover's mind. And that's apart from your awareness forming a relationship with your lover's awareness. And once that whole process has worked, then your body forms a relationship with your lover's body. So that is the foundation of what has made us so successful. And that's the reason why we can fall in love. It has come from that source. That was the success. If you could have this whole process of falling in love working, then you would have the successful gestation, the successful toddlerhood, the childhood, adolescence, the whole family sort of kind of structure, the care and consideration, the teaching, all that stuff going on with trying to ensure that you didn't just have a kid. You had a child that grew to be a successful relationship, a successful adult, able to have successful relationships and pass on to give you the grandchildren, great-grandchildren, go on down the whole line and sort of stuff. So it's to set the whole process in motion. And I think we've sort of been losing sight of that. We've gotten sidetracked. In particular now with like swipe left, swipe right, like people sort of falling in love with their AI sort of chatbot. You know, people sort of falling in love with some scammer who lives in Nigeria. Like, we know how easy we can fall in love. It's just we have to find out how we can fall in love with someone who can fall in love with us. And it can be corrupted. This whole love thing can be corrupted by money and status and these other kinds of things. You have to try and get past all of that. We find it easier to have a relationship with someone who is at the same level as us. So in particular, like if you are incredibly intelligent, it's not a good idea to have a relationship with someone who is not intelligent at all. If you're incredibly beautiful, it's not a good idea to have a relationship with someone who is not attractive at all. If you're incredibly caring and considerate of all things, it's best not to have a relationship with someone who doesn't care about anything about them, about anyone else, about themselves. So we have this kind of hidden selection criteria. But the actual process of our courtship is vocal. It's singing. It's one lover singing to another, to the one they're courting, and that person then singing back, and then the two singing together to produce harmony. It's this game and play. That's what the mind needs. The mind needs to hear the emotion expressed in sound. And so the emotion, that's emotion, and that's character, and that's emotion. So you get a trembly voice, and you have a quaver in the voice, and you have other kinds of things happening, and you have to be able to laugh with your lover. You have to have the same sense of humour, because that will solve an enormous amount of problems. It'll solve a lot of stress. You can get through all of that if you can laugh together. So you go into a relationship, and laughter is a large part of that. Remember, laughter is a whole language in itself. It's an ancient language that is older than symbolic language. There's hee, ha, ha, ho, 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 hoo, hoo. All the different kinds of vowels are in there, and we use that to actually sort of make our symbolic language. And in particular, this is really, really important, and you're going to hate it, but you have to love the smell of your lover, the one you're courting. So you have to meet at the olfactory level. So this is crucial, because that's a system of communication that's really, really old and really, really deep. Now, our nose, the nerves from our nose, they go up through this thing called the cribriform plate that's at the base of our brain, straight into our frontal lobe. And so our frontal lobe evolved to be the organ of sensing stuff, because it was important. It was often the findings of food and other kinds of things, but it was sniffing out where your mate is going to be, like where is this fertile individual I need to sort of procreate with. So the heart was hardwired into smell. And too often, I think, we try to ensure that no one we know ever gets a chance to have a sniff of us. We remove it continuously. We make sure it's always hidden and gone. And I blame this on going right back to our childbirth. When we were brought into the world, we suckled at the breast of a woman who was our mother, who had removed all of her scent and replaced that with perfume. And all of the other adults that came into our life in that early sort of thing, they were the same. We couldn't smell them. They had removed all their scent. And then we got to know, like, you can't, anytime you sniffed someone, you said, oh, Paul, that person smells horrible. If you experience living in an Indigenous community, which I did back in 85. I was a bit young, but at least I experienced it. I work with a lot of Aboriginal people, like in Darwin. And when Aboriginal people needed X-rayed, all of the other radiographers were absolutely racist and hated Aborigines. But I said, I'll X-ray these people. And it took a while, because to get used to it, because the smell. It was a very, very different smell. And they didn't wash, they didn't use soap, they didn't do this, but they grew up with it, and that was just part of their character. They looked like this, they sounded like this, they smelled like this. We don't have that aspect of our identity. But if you are going to have a relationship with someone, it is crucial that your brain is able to sniff that person, and that person is able to sniff with using their brain. This is another way that the brains meet, the minds meet. It's this compatibility thing. And I know you've heard these things about sniffing different T-shirts and sort of stuff. Well, it's more than that. It's not just underarms and stuff. It is the whole body. It's nape of the neck. It's groin. It's the back of the hand. It's all of these other kinds of places that have scent. You know, the old sort of 18th century stuff where you grab the hand of the woman and you sniff it. Well, you're supposed to kiss her, right? But you're actually giving it a sniff. It's an introduction. You're meeting that person at that olfactory level. So, my advice is you have to be courting your lover for an entire month. Now that's to guarantee that if there is a child born from your relationship, you can say, well, that was mine. That's a man says, I know the I'm the father of this child because we've had this relationship for this month, and any previous relationships they're separated by this month. And so that's a honeymoon, maybe that's that moon of this. It's this time of well, it's not a honeymoon, but I think it should be at least a month of getting to know the person, to become very good friends with them, to make sure that you're compatible, to make sure you're not doing it just for the money or the status or something like that. It's got to be a true love relationship. Otherwise, you'll get down the road and you'll think, well, this doesn't work. I don't like this person anymore, and I'm just stuck in this horrible, loveless relationship. And you stop laughing, you stop enjoying each other's time, and you stop communicating. And so the next thing you know, you're in the divorce courts, and the kids haven't got a dad or something. So it's just guidelines, right? But I'm just applying what it is that we are, what it is we evolved to be, how we ended up being human, and how we can use that as a guideline, as some sort of, it's an instruction manual on how to successfully form a relationship. But it's really just going to be up to you. And there'll be temptations, and you'll make mistakes, and terrible things will happen. And you have to sometimes be in a relationship and sort of think, well, this I know is not going to work. I have to get out of this, and now is better than later. And there was a comment on one of my YouTubes I read a couple of days ago. And this person was saying that all life is a performance. We are all just pretending. We're performing. We're doing this performance stuff. And I had a mate who was that as well. He would always say that. Only when he was intoxicated, mind you. The rest of the time he sort of just tried to perform his role as being this amazing, caring, loving, happy, funny guy, you know. But his whole life was he was pretending to be some person he was not. And that won him a lot of relationships. He could sort of chat up any woman, and got an enormous number of relationships, and had women with three of them. And like disasters, every one of them in many sort of ways, like divorced all three. And it was because the women, he could win them over easily. They fell in love with him. And then after a while in the relationship, they realized that it was all a performance. He had not managed to work out how to form a genuine relationship. And he also assumed that everyone else was performing as well. It didn't make sense to him that no one else was performing. Everyone else is actually trying to form an authentic relationship. So you have to be careful. Be careful that you are genuine. You can't just mess around with this stuff. It's not just your own sort of psychological well-being for the rest of your life. It's the health of the community and all of the relatives and stuff. And it's the integrity of the gene line. We need to pass on the whole idea of love being the reason why we become lovers and parents and then grandparents. It's this whole process. And I think now is the time we have to really wake up in this particular way. Do your research. Try and find the height report. It's still out there somewhere. and find out what your gender preference, what those people expect, what they want, what they need at the genital, at the physical, at the psychological, at the emotional level. Try and work out what it is that they want, and try and work out what it is that you are, so that you are able to provide what it is that they want. A relationship should be this coming together of two equals who have the mutual benefit to each other. And it has to be deep. It has to have that dimension. Anyway, I hope I've inspired you to think carefully about all of this stuff. It's talking about love and sex and relationships and stuff is probably the hardest thing we ever do. And in particular with men, I never heard any men in my childhood talk about any of their relationships. And I never saw my father show any affection to my mother until us kids had moved out of home and they were living their own sort of life. And it was the same with all my aunts and uncles. I never saw them sort of, well, there was one or two, but most of them didn't really show much affection as a social partnership. So we didn't have any role models. Probably the only role models that have really been dominant around for the last sort of 50 years have been actors pretending to be in love. Like, that's not something we can learn from. Someone's imagination of a relationship is not the same as a real relationship. And that makes it complicated when we're sort of dealing with reality. Anyway, I've rambled on a lot, and I hope I've given you something to actually think about. So share this far and wide. Discuss what it is. I like the comment section, the way they allows you to be anonymous and just express yourself down there, and other people can come in and sort of say, I know what you're doing there, I know what you're feeling, and I can help you there, and can you give some advice on this? Like, I love that kind of thing. So thanks very much, and my next video will come out in a day or two, so thanks very much. It's going very well for me. I'm doing one a day, and it's great fun. And I hope I'm doing a great service. I feel like this is what an elder is supposed to do. This is the meaning of elder, to have absorbed all the lessons of life and then be in a position to say, well, I'm summarising it, I'm giving you all I can give. And this is a time when all the information has been available. It wasn't around long, like even 20, 50 years ago. It wasn't there. We didn't get it. You may have too much information, too much conflicting stuff. Try to get back to what it is that we are as humans, rather than what it is we've been trained to be as domesticated humans. Very, very important. Don't pretend to be authentic when you're obviously just conforming to the social norms of your time. Thanks very much. Goodbye then. I'm Pete the Polymath.